Do you have the gift of gab and like talking about interesting topics? Are you often called opinionated by your friends and family? Then come to Anchor where you can be all of the above and get paid for it. Along with being one of the easiest systems to create contact with, Anchor supplies everything you need and can be used from your smartphone or computer. They even distribute your content for you so that you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Just download the Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Okay, hello Internet family. This is Anjanette Potter, also known as Adam's Rib, and you are still listening to 31 Days of Global Feminism. So today I didn't have a topic or a person picked out or earmarked to record today for today's podcast. So I just recently saw yet another clip discussing Pamela Anderson's life, and much of it is, at first I thought it was the response to the Pam and Tommy biopic. So let me give you, so let's talk, let me say this, the title, the working title of this was the N-wordization. So I'm going to say really quickly, and hopefully this won't get banned, but niggerization of Pam and Tommy Lee. From here forth, because I am a black woman, and I love myself some black people, and I love other black folks, and I love myself black. So that's going to be the only time you hear that word during this podcast. So let's talk a little bit about what the word that I just said means. Let's do the and it's in Wikipedia Wiktionary. So so let's do a deep dive on the word so you can understand why I'm defining their treatment pretty much the same way that I defined it back when the events actually happened. So if you haven't seen, and I'll come back to, so let me go back to that anyway. So let's first discuss the topic of my, and as you know, Adam's Rib Media Ministry, none of my blogs are T blogs. And Adam's Rib TV is not a T channel for YouTube. But if I think that a situation involving a celebrity is worthy and contributes to social commentary, then I will weigh in on the situation. And by the way, not all channels that are talking about celebrities are T channels. Some of them, and I personally like the old school ones because I like to hear some of the stuff that people used to get into when we were younger. So I'm not completely immune. So Pam and Tommy is an American biographical drama miniseries chronicling the marriage between Pamela Anderson and Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee. These parts are played by Lily James and Sebastian Stan, respectively, during the period that their unauthorized sex tape was made public. Based on the 2014 Rolling Stone article, Pam and Tommy, The Untold Story of the World's Most Infamous Sex Tape, by Amanda Chicago Lewis. The series was created for Hulu, so it's on Hulu if you care to watch it, by Robert Siegel, and is produced by Point Grey Pictures Annapurna Television, and Lionsgate Television. So it's based on not just their marriage, but it's also, even though it gives background and it goes into their marriage, it's also talking about one event out of their marriage. So their marriage was a little on the tumultuous side, but the big thing that they're talking about in this, in the Pam and Tommy Lee miniseries, they're discussing not their marriage so much as but the events that led up to their sex tape being released to the public. And so I also would like to give a little bit of a review here. So the biopic is on Netflix. I mean, not Netflix. The biopic is on Hulu. Lord have mercy. So it's already on Hulu. Many of us have already saw it. I went ahead and looked at it. I have to give props to the people who put it together. They did a very good job. The casting was very good. Everybody, did an excellent. Everybody did an excellent job at their parts and everything. One thing I like about films like this is they're a bit of a time capsule. So I really like when people do a good job. I have said before, and I'll say again, I kind of like films that take me back in time, or if you're talking about a particular time period, I want to be able, like if somebody were younger and were looking at this, are you realistically giving them a sense of what that time period was like? And they did a rather excellent job of doing that. Because I was around, I was an adult during the time that it was happening. I was a regular person working in a salon because I did hair, and was hearing about all of it and talking to regular other people, working people who, fellow hairstylists and customers that had seen the tape because it was available on the internet, and discussed, what it was. There wasn't really a whole lot to it. From what I was told, it really was just them being in love and newly married and being on their honeymoon. So the series development was announced 2018. So typically they announce stuff, and then we've had the pandemic and everything. So everything has been delayed because of the pandemic. But that's as much as I want to go into on the actual film in and of itself, because I watched it. It didn't really tell me it gave me some new information, but I don't know. I don't know. Well, let me go a little bit deeper down here, because there's some other things that I want to talk about. So there was, let me see here. I watched it all in one setting, so I binge watched it, and there were 8 episodes to it. So I watched all 8 episodes, and like I said, they did a wonderful job of taking us back in time to show us what was all going on in the atmosphere during that time. So they were, for the models who marry rockers, for the people who stan them, they were a pretty popular couple. I think it gave hope to people who are a part of that world, um, I was looking at the take, and they were discussing it, and they kind of put them as the it couple, and I was like, well, I don't know. I think it depends on who you ask, and unfortunately, since white media has a habit of completely ignoring black folks when it comes to who we think is an it couple. I think they were an it couple for the crowd that they were in. Rockers, marrying models, and marrying models is sort of a thing that's been around for a while. It kind of goes back to the days of Mick Jagger and Jerry Hall. Um, I think he had a few, and maybe even further back than that. Um, so let me see here the reception. I was kind of trying to get a because from what the buzz was on this whole thing was that Pamela Anderson was not real happy about the whole thing because this was considered to be an unauthorized. So it was taken from. So it says the untold story, but the film in and of itself was not authorized by everyone involved. So it wasn't authorized by Pamela Anderson, and and it doesn't mention here. The information that I'm reading right now is from Wikipedia. But I was trying to see if there was any mention of it not being authorized. Okay. So here it is, I found it. So development. The series was first announced in 2018 with Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg developing the project under their production company Point Grey Pictures, and James Franco attached to direct the miniseries and play the miniseries and play Tommy Lee. By December 2020, Franco had left the series, and it was announced that Hulu had greenlit the project with an 8-episode limited series order. Craig Gillespie was set to direct, with Robert D. Siegel writing and Rogen and Goldberg executive producing the miniseries. Tatiana S. Riegel, a frequent collaborator of Gillespie's, was attached to edit the miniseries. Pamela Anderson reportedly did not want to be involved with the series at all, despite multiple attempts to include her. Tommy Lee also was not involved with the series, but he supported it. So they did get some support from at least one party involved in it. The series is based on a 2014 Rolling Stone article describing the story of how Anderson and Lee's sex tape was stolen. And I want you to focus on that one little word. It was stolen. So this was not a drop. This was not them, dropping it and pretending that that this was not self-leakage. This was not a publicity stunt. This was actually their private property that someone stole and released. Siegel found it hard to believe the events had not been the subject of a film or series previously, with the producers optioning the rights to the article to serve as the basis of the series. Co-showrunners Siegel and DeVentis noticed that most of the basic plot beats came from that article, and the basic mechanics of the events was pretty much what happened with the conversations between the characters dramatized. So I wanted to go ahead and focus on that too, the fact that not everybody that was involved, whose story was being told, was involved in it. And so Tommy Lee went ahead and supported it, even though he did not wish to be involved in it. Okay. Now, let me see here. As I was getting together my stuff that I had already to do this podcast, I'm seeing now that Pamela Anderson is, let me see here, that Netflix, let me look here. So it says, after Pamela Anderson announces Netflix documentary, Pam and Tommy's Sebastian Stan, which is the guy who played Tommy Lee, gives his honest thoughts. So Hulu's series Pam and Tommy has caused some controversy over the fact that its subjects, and primarily Pamela Anderson, refused to be involved with the series. The series, which starred Sebastian Stan and Lily James as the 90s icons, sheds some light on the crime committed against Anderson and Tommy Lee, in which an intimate tape from their honeymoon was stolen. Like I said, stolen. We're going to drive that point home here. So from their home and distributed in the early days of the internet. The Baywatch star has since announced that she's working on a documentary of her own to stream on Netflix, and Pam and Tommy Stan, shared his thoughts. So it says that so I'm a little late to the party on this one, but it says that the documentary was announced last week by Pamela Anderson and Netflix, and will be directed by Ryan White and produced by her son Brandon Thomas Lee. Okay. Anderson scrubbed her Instagram account, leaving just a single post announcing the upcoming documentary, which has been reportedly in the works for years. So there's a dual purpose as to why she might not have wanted to cooperate with this miniseries. And so I have a copy of it. Okay. So it's if you are wanting to look at her account, it's a Netflix post-it note with a little kiss at the bottom of it, and it says, "My life, 1,000 imperfections, 1,000,000 misperceptions, wicked, wild, and lost, nothing to live up to. I can only surprise you, not a victim, but a survivor, alive to tell the real story." So that's what, which I can kind of understand. So in the photo, well, I've already read it. So both her and Tommy Lee's sons, Brandon Thomas Lee and Dylan Jagger Lee, commented on their mother's announcement with heart emojis. Okay. And if you would like, I can always leave a link to the post-it note if you want to see it bad enough. And I looked at Netflix companion site Tadum, and they confirm so their comment, Pamela Anderson finally tells her side of the story. A new Ryan White directed documentary features never before footage and exclusive interviews. So this is courtesy of Netflix Tadum. Baywatch star, Canadian icon, animal rights activist, which she is, Playboy model, 90s tabloid staple, Forget What You Think You Know About Pamela Anderson. A new Netflix documentary attempts to explore every facet of a woman who's been in the spotlight for better or worse over 30 years. Directed by Ryan White, the as of yet untitled movie promises an intimate look embedded in the life of Pamela Anderson as she looks at her professional and personal path and prepares for the next steps on her journey. White's past credit includes The Keepers, a Netflix docuseries investigating the cold case of murdered nun Catherine Sejnik in 1969, along with exclusive interviews with Anderson herself. Viewers will have access to never before seen archival footage and personal journals to unpack her experience in Hollywood and beyond, in her own words this time. So that's courtesy of Tadam. So let me give you a little bit of information on Tadam. So Tadam, from what I'm reading, is named Tadam because it is based on the little sound that you hear when you get on the Netflix site to watch movies or stream any movies. The little noise, and I was like, okay. So Tadam is the official companion site to Netflix, helping to find and fuel your fandom for the TV shows and movies that you love. On Tadam, you'll find exclusive interviews, behind-the-scenes content, bonus videos, and more. Begin exploring Tadam by visiting netflix.com/Tadam. And if you log in with your Netflix account, you'll get a more personalized in experience based on the TV shows and movies that you recently rated or watched on Netflix. Tadam is currently only available in English. You can't log into Tadam with a kid's profile, and when you are logged in, you may see stories about titles above your profile's maturity rating and setting. Okay, so it's kind of a companion site, sort of a news site that in relation to Netflix content. So we have a little bit of stories here. So let's go into the whole topic that this is about, and that is them being N-wordized. Okay, so the word is the usually systematic act of dehumanizing people, especially black people. Okay, definition number 2, the act or process of being exposed or subjugated to black people or their influence. Wow. Okay, so that is Wiktionary, courtesy of Wikipedia, their definition. So we look at word sense. So it's offensive ethnic slur, the usual systematic act of dehumanizing people. 2008, one source 2008, David Hilliard, the Black Panther Party Service to the People programs. The basic goals of that were to promote white greed and hatred. Okay, in 2009, Cornel West, Hope on a Tightrope, Words and Wisdom. What are the conditions under which black people will straighten their backs? How do you shake the N-wordization of black people? So basically what that has to do, and I remember during the 90s, during the Gulf War and the recession that was going on at that time, people were having to, basically the situation that we had now because of the pandemic, a lot of people who never thought that they would ever have to seek public assistance was having to get it. And I remember a woman on one of the talk shows, it was a black woman, intellectual, and she said they're now experiencing what it is like to have to go and if you recently had to go through this, and I have, having to go and expose your entire life in order to get help or assistance, in order to get help with your rent, with your utilities, having to go through that whole process, which I understand that they don't want to just be giving out money to anybody. They don't want to be giving out money and feel like they're, well, they don't get it back because typically it's grants, so it's money that you don't have the ability to pay back. And it has everything to do with you needing to prove that you need the help and that you're not just some big old scammer. And I completely, totally understand that. I mean, I wouldn't want to give out money and not be assured that the money, that even if I'm not going to get it back, the point is you want to be able to know that the money that you're giving someone is being used for the purposes and they really are in need. I think that the Reagan era and the whole myth of the welfare queen really hurt public assistance and hurt people who were down on their luck or less than fortunate, because it made everybody look as though they're scammers. Never mind, many of the biggest scammers are already paid and have been in public office and have had access to all kind of power over people's lives. So why do I define what happened to Pamela Anderson, especially Pamela Anderson? Nudity doesn't really hurt men very much. Neither does, even though both men and women pose nude, participate in the sex industry, participate in sex work. It's really only women that wind up with a damaged image as a result. And it's unfortunate because many times, once people find, I've seen quite a few people. What I like is the ability to, let's say you did some things when you were younger, and now you want to be able to you want to be able to leave that behind you. That's one of the things that I think is unfortunate, is you can make one mistake from like 20, 30 years ago, like posing nude. Usually with women, it has to do with past issues involving doing sexual things in exchange for money. And people have a tendency to not like to let you escape it. I talked about how on the Basketball Wives, how they talked about Evelyn Lozada, and because she had a past involving sex, no one seemed to want to let her leave it behind, to the point where they start saying that you're sleeping with men that you're not even sleeping with. You admit to sleeping with one man, like her issue with Tammy, where she found out that she was dating Tammy's husband but didn't know it because she didn't know he was married or didn't know who his wife was until she met Tammy, and then she found out who Tammy's husband was. And you have people with blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, but if someone's mate doesn't tell you that they have a mate, or you don't know that they're married, which is the case with a lot of married men, that cannot be helped. You see what I'm saying? That it can't be helped if you didn't know, or if they lie about the status of their relationship or the nature of their relationship. They admit they're married, but they tell you that they're separated. Or they admit that they married, but they tell you that they're really like roommates and they're no longer sleeping together and they're not romantically involved and all the other little stuff. And I mean, like, you could do a Google search and find lies married men tell in order to get next to women. But it seems like, the women who, like, say you pose for Playboy or anything like that, which Playboy tended to glamorize women posing nude, and tried to do it tasteful, but it is what it is, and people are who they are. And I'm saying this, in reference to, the type of men who think that it is okay to do what this guy did to them. So at the time I pretty much, this issue is one of many reasons that I believe sex work is BS. Okay, and I think it is because, the same men who will go and will patronize a brothel, or buy a Playboy, or download porn, or whatever else, they are allowed to remain anonymous. They are allowed to watch and consume even underage porn and remain under the radar. But many times the people who they watch can't. You can't go and clean up and expunge your past as easily when you're the one that the camera is traded on. I saw the biopic, and I pretty much gave you a pretty good description. I mean, it was, they all did their jobs, and it was a very good biopic. It was a very good miniseries. I would give it 5 kissies. As far as rating it, I give it 5 kissy lips, because they did a very good job. However, I feel the same way I felt when this happened in the news and people were talking about it. And I remember thinking, oh Lord, because you hear about people dropping tapes all the time. And like I said, because the entertainment industry are the way they are, it's almost like there's no such thing as bad publicity, because it basically, feeds into even more attention for the people that it's situated around. It pretty much feeds into the situation. So, because Pamela, because the two of them were still hot property at the time that this happened, it just basically fed into them getting even more attention, especially media attention, than what they were getting already. So what stuff like this does, if it's planned and if it's something that is contrived, you don't have much of a career, it can give you even more media attention and more attention from the paparazzi. If it's been a while, if you were famous for anything, and it's been a while since you were in the camera and in the public eye, it can renew interest in you. In the case of Pam and Tommy Lee, since they were already hot property at the time of them getting married in the first place, no one had to renew interest in them, because public interest in them hadn't quite faded yet. So it basically added to even more scandal to them. So I remember talking to a co-worker of mine, and I said, women are gonna learn to stop letting men tape them having sex. Even in my sexually freest period of my life, I never got into letting men tape us in the act, because the tape never seems to stay private. Like in this case, Tommy Lee was completely innocent. They were truly both victims in this case, but most of the time what happens is the ex-boyfriend, the ex-husband, the ex-lover feels spurned some kind of way, and then the next thing you know, your stuff is on the internet. And every guy says the same thing. Oh, it'll just be for us, honey. Nobody else is gonna see it, and other people always wind up seeing it anyway. So my big thing is always a no. I just don't, because like I said, men can be complete pussies, and because they are complete pussies, it usually winds up being leaked anyway. And in this case, a man was behaving like a pussy. It just wasn't the man in the tape. And I'm going to get to that. So I remember telling someone, I said, this is why I'm not big on letting men tape you, because it never stays private. It never stays between the two of you. No matter how much they promise, it just never does. Now, in their case, it probably would have stayed private unless Tommy Lee decided to act like a dick and leak it. Okay? But he did not. He was completely innocent, and he was as much a victim as his wife. So, even though I have the above sentiment, and I remember my coworker going, "Oh yeah, you're a born again Christian." Listen, everything is, even though most of my decisions involve me being a born again Christian, like I told her, I wasn't a Christian always. And I could have just as easily been involved with somebody who decided they wanted to tape our intimate moments. Okay, us having sex. It could have easily been me out here, just like the rest of these other women. Abstinence doesn't make me better. It makes me different. Born again Christian doesn't make me better. It makes me different. It makes me set apart, which I'm going to cover when I talk about Christianity these next 4 Sundays. These next 4 Fridays. So most of the women that you're looking at in church, we have been spit, shine, scrubbed clean, and sat on a pew. You don't know who you looking at. You don't know who some of these grandmas and different other people, and I'm a grandma now. Some of these older grandmas that you looking at sitting on them pews, worshiping and shouting every Sunday, you don't know what God delivered some of them women from. You don't know. So before you start attributing everything that somebody does and begin prude shaming born again women, I want you to know that there's a reason why we shout. There's a reason why we amen, because we know what we've been delivered from, and we know what some of y'all walking into, which is why we give the advice that we give. Some of these old heads have some stories they could tell you. So even though I have the thing about not liking to be taped, I still cannot wrap my mind around the fact that this man broke into their home, stole a safe containing this video, and made money from it, and never saw any jail time. So to me, that's where the N-wordization comes in. They were violated. Okay, they were violated. And it confirms some things that I really kind of thought at the time. I'm like, he didn't break in there just to steal no tape. Right? Because it's not like he was doing work on their home and all of a sudden came across it and decided, well, since I know this is valuable to them and they didn't pay me, and it's like they do everything else. I don't know what the purpose of this movie really was, other than confirm to me, and I will say it again, they got away with what they got away with because white males feel that they are entitled to unfettered access to women sexually. Especially women who do sex work, in this case posing nude in Playboy, because I tend to put I recognize that there are layers to things when you call it sex work. It's not all prostitution, it's not all, contact with the people. Sometimes it's either, it's online and you're doing it. Sometimes it's, there's layers to it. And I can go into that, and I probably will over this month, because I plan on talking about a lot of really juicy topics. So in this case, and they'll celebrate other white males' entitlement to unfettered access to such women, even if it means allowing another white male to get away with committing a crime. That's the inwardization of this couple. Now, you have people, and it's funny to me, he never saw no jail time. I don't see where he did no jail. I don't even see where they were able to take him to civil court and get a portion of what he made on this tape. And they even show clips They've even showed clips of her and Tommy Lee being places and saying, we never saw a dime. Now, I'm not saying that this is okay if you see money or make money on it, but they were never able to recover. And the funny thing to me is, looking at it, I'm like, okay, he changed his mind a few dozen times, which is something that you deal with. This is why customer service is such a transferable skill. Being able to deal with people, being able to get people, being able to deal with the public is such a skill that transfers no matter what job you have. If you're dealing with the public, the ability to deal with the public and deal with, difficult people is a skill. So, and many contractors don't emphasize it. And unfortunately, the higher up that food chain you go, as far as the type of clients that you service, you may deal with an exceptional amount of difficulty. So I get that Tommy Lee probably was not the nicest person to work for, maybe a little difficult. And that's also another aspect of white male privilege, the ability to be difficult. Because when women are seen as difficult, it can be the kiss of death for us career-wise and our aspirations. But a man can be difficult, and the more money he has and the more power and status he has, the more we're likely to take it on the chin, which this guy obviously didn't do. So I get that Tommy Lee was difficult. He continued to keep changing his mind about how he wanted things to be. He said money was no object, which to me, if money's no object, obviously they didn't do the smart thing and get part of the money up front so that they would be able to accommodate all these changes and not go broke in the process, which most smart subcontractors do, or at least get the money for the supplies from him up for. But that's a discussion for another day. And I only say this because my uncles have done, work on my grandmother's house, which my grandmother, I don't know if she paid them or not, but I'm sure they probably got money or something for the supplies that it took to do work on. But I know a little something about people getting work done on their homes. Let me say that much. And so I get that he probably was difficult. I get that he probably wasn't the most pleasant person to work for. I also understand that the work that they did so far, they weren't even able to recover on that because they got fired about midway through, and basically were not able to recover their tools, and were not paid for their work. So I totally understand that. And most people would say, this is why you lawyer up and you don't handle stuff on your own. This man chose to break into their home, violate the law, steal their stuff. And when he stole the safe out of their home, he didn't even know the sex tape was there. Okay, so so he stole it. He was pawning. He was in the process of pawning off everything that he stole. Okay. Now the reason why he was able to be so successful with this sex tape is because he had ties to the porn world himself. I think he was a porn actor at one point. So when he discovers the tape, then he takes it to someone else, and then that's when they build a website and they decide to go ahead and make money off of it and everything. And I'm like, and then the process of this. Now I can, and like I said, when Pam and Tommy Lee were pressing charges and were doing all of this other stuff, and me and my mom were even talking about it, because I was like, so you mean it? No, I don't. You mean to tell me that this man broke into their home, stole not just the tape, but stole removed an entire safe took it out of there in the process of pawning the stolen items, which should have gotten him arrested right there, because many pawn shops, some, pawn shops kind of have a bad reputation, but they're not the most thorough. But like, if somebody, I don't think Tommy Lee knew it was stolen until he was going to look for something else, the way that the movie had it. So this is going to be interesting to see Miss Anderson's documentary. The only thing, but let me finish with my little diatribe. So for me, like, if this guy had have been black, it would have been all over. But no, and let me say this. I don't say this to say that I wish I were white, because I don't. Because I don't really want the right to do what a lot of white people do. But it like I said, I just have the same. I'm like, well, this makes an interesting podcast, because, or blog topic, because I wonder how anybody else feels about that whole thing. You do know that this man, had this man been any other color, he would have wound up in prison. He would have done time. He broke into their stuff and stole their stuff, and was rewarded for it. He made money. I still haven't heard anybody say, and I remember looking all of that up before I decided to do this podcast. I'm like, this man still has not done any jail time. Did not see one day in jail. Did not have to pay them back. Like, they couldn't even take him to, I don't know if they took him to civil court or not. Okay, but if they did take him to civil court, they didn't get anything. They got not one dime out of the proceeds. He and whoever he was in cahoots with got to keep all that money. So when we want to have the conversation on white privilege, I want you to think about that. Now, I'm not making this podcast and claiming that I approve, and that Pamela Anderson or her husband at the time, her ex-husband now, were patron saints. And I think it's interesting, what people do to try to justify what this guy did. Because now you have all of these people coming out, releasing all this information. I'm guessing because she's now going to do a documentary of her own. Now you have all these people releasing all this stuff. Well, let me tell you about her. And I'm like, isn't it convenient when it's a person that may have been involved in any type of sex work at all? All of a sudden, everybody wants to bring out every mistake that person ever made to cover up this one thing, to cover up this violation that she's complaining about. And I'm like, okay, you feel like she doesn't have a right to have a complaint because, she's posed nude, but these were things from her honeymoon that no one was ever supposed to see. Part of being a free moral agent is the right to decide when the public sees you nude and when they don't. I'll say it again. Part of being a free moral agent is the right to be able to decide when someone sees you nude and when they don't. I have a right to decide if I want to bear all. I also have a right to decide to whom I allow that access to be seen. I also have the right to decide when I don't want people to see it. Okay? I have the right to decide. One of the things that I have been posting on my social media here lately is the number of statements that I hear from guys justifying pressuring women sexually. And so one of the things that I constantly say is, this equals my fragile male ego cannot ego cannot handle that you are a free moral agent that has the right to decide when sex enters your life. In my case, after marriage. And it's amazing how many men, and to me, the fact that this man did not do any jail time says that our system, that white privilege is real, and white male privilege is real. And the fact that you have women who, well, she is not like she was this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't care if she was a hooker who stood in the middle of Broad and High in the city of Columbus, Ohio, plying her trades. At the moment that she says she does not want to be seen naked, she has a right not to be seen naked. At the moment that she decides, and that's what Christianity does for people. A lot of what people don't understand, or what a lot of Christians don't understand, is you have a right to decide you don't want some stuff seen. Regardless of who is mad at your husband, I don't care if your husband was an absolute dick to this guy the whole time he was working on your home. At the moment that this dude committed breaking and entering, he committed a crime. You may not like Pamela Anderson's past. You may think that her ex-husband is an absolute douchebag. But what happened, but what I see in the fact that this man has done no jail time for committing what is considered to be an actual crime tells a real story about white male privilege in this country. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got on my little soapbox and said what I had to say, but I mean what I have to say. This is the true N-wordizing moment. When you realize he didn't even do, he committed a crime against them. Like like I said, Tommy Lee might have been an absolute dick on this job. Okay? And it may have been at a time where you really needed the money and were looking forward to the money that you hoped to get. Okay, I get that. People are, customers are difficult. But do you have a right because someone is, well, he completely ripped me off. Do you know how, I work in the salon world, and do you know how many people I have watched walk away with perfectly good haircuts for free? Because the customer decided in their mind that they were not going to pay for it. And it don't have to be a bad haircut. They can decide they don't want to pay for it because they didn't like your attitude. Do you know how many people get away with free services because they don't like the attitude of the person who waited on them? And to say some more about white privilege, how many times does that happen if the service person was black or some other color? So if you want to talk about scamming, yeah, that's the true scam. People are difficult to work with. But what this man did was wrong. And I keep hearing people, lambasting her and, just like the whole Kim Kardashian thing. All Kim did was make one sex tape. And we're constant, and it's almost 20 years later, and we still hearing about the tape. At what point? And I'm saying this because the next 4 Fridays, not only am I going to teach about salvation, I'm also teaching against people who seem to want to extend all kind of Christ-like forgiveness and this, that, and the other. Now, I don't have to forgive this man. He didn't do anything to me personally. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to keep bringing up the tape, then let's continue to bring up to the fact that this man committed a crime and never saw a bit of time for it. Let's talk about the fact that he made money off of their private possession, which he did not, and I can't remember at the time. They said something like, well, It's in his possession. I'm like, but he stole it. Like, how do you break into somebody else's house and steal their stuff and get allowed to keep it and get allowed to make money off of it? He had it because he stole it. Okay, like we hear it all the time. Well, she wasn't no angel. She don't have to be an angel. It's her shit. That is her stuff. He did not have a right to have it. He stole it. He broke into their home and stole it, amongst other things that he stole. But even if he broke into their home and the tape was the only thing he took, he still didn't have a right to have it. It was their private property. Free moral agent, she has the right to pose nude. She also has the right to decide that if I to have a honeymoon tape and not let the public show it and not let the public see it. And the fact that this man made money off it tells you a little something about how we view people's privacy too and their boundaries. Okay, regardless of whether or not I approve of what's going on in your home, you still have a right for what's in your home to be private unless you consent to sharing it. So this is, like I said before, I'm going to be, and yes, this is a feminist issue. The right to be able to decide who you appear naked in front of and who you don't appear naked in front of is very much a feminist issue, because it has to do with women and their sexual boundaries. As women, there's a reason why we have the hashtags that we have. Yes, all women. Okay, you okay, sis? Me too. Church too. It's because of they don't exist because and Black Lives Matter to an extent. Okay, because they don't exist because, I just can't get enough of the police coming into our neighborhoods and victimizing innocent black people, or victimizing black people, or I just can't get enough of the guy on the elevator who stands too close or follows me home. I can't get enough of the construction worker who yells and tells me nice rack. I can't get enough of the guy who I don't know. And I just saw recently on one of my fellow YouTubers, some guy threw excrement on this Latin woman. Yeah, we just can't get enough of people who do wrong things to us and violate our boundaries, especially if you're a woman. They exist because of the deeply entrenched misogynistic belief of unfettered access. So I'm going to go ahead. I've been at it for 57 minutes now. I would like to hear what you have to say. I will once again I'm now working with my apps to try to get the rest of the stuff made into videos for YouTube. But this will be available, this will be available by podcast pretty much everywhere that I named. Let me go ahead and this podcast, I would say probably within a half hour from now, will be available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Google, Overcast, Breaker, Castbox, Pocket Cast, and Stitcher today. I hopefully can get most of the podcasts that I've created this week up and on YouTube by this weekend at least. So you guys have a good one. I will probably be doing at least one more podcast after this one. I'm trying to keep them. I'm trying to keep it at least 2 podcasts a day. And so this one was a little shorter than I thought. Well, it was about as long as I thought it would be because I knew I would be talking for a minute because of the subject matter. So I'm going to go ahead and get on the next one. And, in keeping with my content creation schedule. So you guys have a good one. The next topic I plan to talk about, let me see here. Let me see here. I think that the next podcast after I get done with this one is going to be on a notable, but I haven't figured out which one yet. But like I said, this year, February and March will not just be a celebration of feminists, not just women, but feminists. It also will be on topics that are central themes in the whole feminist movement. So you guys have a good one. That is me blowing you a goodbye kiss, and I will see you on the next podcast. Hello, you have reached the message line for Adam's Rib Media Ministry. If you would like to give me a shout out, recommend some topics for discussion, or give an opinion about a topic I've already discussed, either on my blogs or here on my podcast, leave a message and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.